What is up, everybody? Happy Friday. It is a beautiful summer day here in Halifax. We have the NHL draft tonight. It is a bad day to be a case of beer, that's all I'm going to say. But before the first round of the draft gets underway tonight, I wanted to give you guys my 2024 NHL mock draft. We do at least one of these on the channel every single year. Like I always say when it comes to these mock drafts, I do not claim to be a scout by any means. I just do these for fun. We're only going to be trying to predict the first 15 picks of the first round. We're not going to be doing all 32. Reason being, I feel like I have a pretty good understanding of the prospects that are expected to go early in the first round, but once we get outside the lottery and outside the first round, my knowledge is pretty limited, so at that point I'd just be throwing stuff out the wall and hoping it sticks. As always, I want to know what you guys are thinking, so be sure to let me know your predictions for how you think the first 15 picks of the first round are going to play out tonight. And just as a heads up, there was another trade yesterday that I haven't talked about on the channel just yet. Andrew Mangiapane dealt to the Washington Capitals, so I will be giving my quick thoughts on that deal at the end of this video, so stay tuned for that if it's something you're interested in. Leave a like on this video if you're excited for the draft, and with all that being said, let's go ahead and start off with the first overall draft pick. This is a no-brainer. I don't really have to explain this one. The San Jose Sharks will be selecting Macklin Celebrini out of Boston University. Celebrini is the clear-cut consensus first overall draft pick, and it's been that way all year long. He has the potential to be a franchise-altering player for the San Jose Sharks. I'm not going to sit here and say Celebrini is going to be as good as Connor Bedard, but what Bedard is to the Blackhawks, the face of the franchise from the moment he was drafted, Celebrini is going to be exactly that for the San Jose Sharks. Moving on now to the second overall draft pick, and this is where things get interesting. There's been a lot of debate over really the last 2 months. Are the Blackhawks going to go with Demidov or Levshunov? Throughout this week leading up to the NHL draft, all signs are pointing to them selecting defenseman Artem Levshunov out of Michigan State University, so that's who I'm going to go with here for my mock draft. A lot of people believe that Levshunov is the most complete defenseman in the 2024 draft class. He's a right shot, he's got good size, has a physical element to his game. Every time I read something about him, it seems like scouts are just always raving about his skating ability. There's a ton of offensive upside there. I do believe that Demidov is the second best prospect in this draft class, but that's not to say Chicago isn't getting an amazing prospect if they take Levshunov. He has all the potential in the world to be a future #1 defenseman for Chicago. Next up with the third overall pick, it sounds like the Ducks are going defenseman as well. Wouldn't be surprised if they decide to go with the Russian Siliev here, but I'm predicting they take Zeev Buium out of the University of Denver. As a freshman, Zeev Buium was a nominee for the Hobey Baker Award. He finished second on the University of Denver in scoring with 50 points in 42 games. He led them to a national championship. He was also a key piece for the gold medal winning United States team in both the 2023 U18s and the 2024 World Juniors. The dude is just a winner. Craig Button actually has Buium ranked as his #1 defenseman in the entire draft class over somebody like Levshunov. Buium is also a Southern California native, so there is that connection there. I think he makes a ton of sense for the Ducks at third overall. A blue line led by the likes of Buium, Zellweger, and Minchikov for the next decade sounds absolutely disgusting. Moving on now to the fourth overall pick, which may not even belong to the Columbus Blue Jackets by tonight. Frank Saravalli reported that they're open for business at number 4. Elliot Friedman also reported that the Philadelphia Flyers were really pushing to get that fourth overall draft pick, but apparently Columbus's asking price was too high. So we'll see what ends up happening. As of now, they still have the fourth overall draft pick, and if they end up actually making the selection and not trading this pick, I think they go with centerman Caden Lindstrom from Medicine Hat in the WHL. A fascinating prospect who obviously missed quite a bit of time this season due to a back injury, but it doesn't sound like that's going to deter a team from selecting him in the top 5. In the 32 games Lindstrom did play in this season for Medicine Hat, had 27 goals and 46 points. His combination of size, speed, and skill at the center position is very hard to come by. Lindstrom has an incredibly high ceiling, so if he's still available at number 4, that's who I think the Blue Jackets end up taking, giving them a 1-2 punch down the middle moving forward of Adam Fantilli and Caden Lindstrom, which has all the potential in the world to be a complete matchup nightmare. Next up with the 5th overall draft pick, I have the Montreal Canadiens selecting Ivan Demidov, who again, like I said earlier in the video, I believe is the second best prospect in this draft class behind Macklin Celebrini. If he's available at number 5 for the Canadiens, I really just could not see a a scenario where they do not take Demidov. Obviously, there's the concern about when Demidov will actually come over to North America, but I really believe that's overblown. I mean, just look at the Matvei Michkov situation. He is going to be with the Philadelphia Flyers next season, which is obviously much sooner than expected, so I really don't think GM should overthink it when it comes to Demidov. In my opinion, he is a can't-miss prospect. Next up, with the 6th overall draft pick, I have Utah selecting left shot defenseman Anton Siliev out of the KHL, the unicorn of the 2024 NHL draft. The dude is an absolute monster at 6'7". He's very mobile and is a fantastic skater for his size. I do feel like he lacks the offensive upside that some of the other defensemen have who are expected to be selected with a top pick in this draft. He's not a prospect that's expected to put up big point totals in the NHL or quarterback a team's top power play unit, but at the very least, I think Siliev is a pretty safe bet to become a real solid second pairing shutdown guy. Should be an absolute beast defensively. Moving on now with the 7th overall draft pick, I have the Ottawa Senators selecting winger Beckett Seneca from the Oshawa Generals of the OHL, a prospect who over these last few months leading up to tonight's draft has just continued to rise and rise on a lot of people's draft rankings. He's got good size on the wing at 6'2". When he was drafted into the OHL, he was only 5'10", so he's grown 4 inches over the last 2 years. I don't think Beckett Seneca has the same kind of dynamic top-end offensive talent that someone like Berkeley Catton or even a defenseman like Zane Parekh has, but I do feel like Seneca is a safer prospect than those guys. Already has a very well-rounded offensive game, responsible defensively as well. I wouldn't be surprised at all to see the Senators go with a right shot defenseman here, which is obviously an organizational need for them, but if they go with a forward, it sounds like they're high on Beckett Seneca, so that's who I think they're going to end up taking. Continuing on now with the 8th overall selection, I have the Seattle Kraken selecting right shot defenseman Zane Parekh from the Saginaw Spirit of the OHL. A lot of people believe that Zane Parekh is the best offensive defenseman in the entire 2024 draft class, had 96 points, 33 of which were goals in just 66 games with Saginaw this season. Zane Parekh is as dynamic as it gets on the blue line. Obviously, there's concerns about how his defensive game is going to hold up in the NHL, which is definitely valid. He's a player who likes to take risks. That's part of his game. But when it comes to offensive upside, there isn't many players, defensemen or forwards in this draft class with more than Zane Parekh. Moving on now with the 9th overall selection, I have the Calgary Flames selecting T. Ginla from the Kelowna Rockets of the WHL. The dude is a beast offensively, one of the best goal scorers in the draft class. He had 47 in just 64 games this season with Kelowna. It kind of feels like the writing's on the wall here. A lot of people are expecting it to happen. Everybody wants it to happen. T. Ginla, 9th overall to the Calgary Flames. It's just the perfect scenario. Next up with the 10th overall pick, I have the New Jersey Devils selecting centerman Berkeley Catton out of the WHL. He's drawn a lot of comparisons to Zach Benson. Insanely skilled offensively, dominated the WHL, 116 points in just 68 games, but is a candidate to fall in the draft due to his size like Zach Benson did last year. I said this in a recent video, I'll say it again. Cam Robinson, who I think is a must follow on Twitter to keep up with prospects throughout the year. He is the director of film scouting for elite prospects. One thing he said about Berkeley Catton that really stuck out to me was that if he was 6'2" or had another level of speed, he'd be the clear number 2 prospect in this draft class. So I feel like that really speaks to just how insanely talented Catton is. I'm really hoping he falls all the way to Detroit at 15, but I just can't see it happening. I think he goes in the top 10, and here I have him going 10th to New Jersey. Continuing on now, next up with the 11th overall draft pick, the San Jose Sharks' 2nd pick in the top 15. Yesterday, they made a trade with Buffalo to move up from 14th to 11th, and with the 11th overall pick, I have them selecting left shot defenseman Sam Dickinson from the London Knights of the OHL. Assuming the San Jose Sharks take Celebrini 1st overall, which, I mean, let's be real, they're going to. Celebrini is already a Shark. He has been since the draft lottery, pretty much. So I do feel like with their 2nd first rounder, it's very likely they go with a defenseman. I think San Jose's prospect pool is really missing that blue chip defensive prospect, and they'd definitely be getting that here in Sam Dickinson. Moving on now with the 12th overall selection, I have the Philadelphia Flyers selecting right shot winger Michael Brandsegg-Nygaard. He's another one of those guys similar to Berkeley Catton that I would like to see there at 15 for Detroit, but I just don't think he gets there. Everything I've read suggests that Brandsegg-Nygaard is one of the more high energy, high compete level prospects in this draft class. A good skater with a really strong shot, Prashanth Iyer, who is a must-follow if you're a Red Wings fan, has said that he believes Brandt Nygaard is the best forechecker in the entire draft class. I think Brandt Nygaard is the kind of player that John Tortorella would love to have on his team, someone who can play up and down in the lineup and potentially play on both special teams. Next up with the 13th overall selection, I have the Minnesota Wild selecting winger Cole Eiserman out of the U.S. National Development Program. Cole Eiserman is a fascinating prospect, probably the best pure pound-for-pound goal scorer in the entire class, but there's obviously a lot of questions about pretty much every other area of his game. The good thing about that is a lot of those other areas that there's questions about are things that you can teach at the next level, but you can't teach the kind of natural goal scoring ability that Cole Eiserman has. I think someone with the potential to be a 30 or 40 goal scorer in the NHL is going to be too good to pass up for Minnesota at 13th overall, so I have them taking Eiserman. Next up with the 14th overall pick, I have the Buffalo Sabres selecting right shot defenseman Carter Yakimchuk out of the WHL. 30 goals, 71 points in 66 games for the Hitmen this season. A ton of offensive upside there. Good size as well at 6'3", with the Buffalo Sabres already having 3 premier left shot defensemen on the roster in Owen Power, Rasmus Dahlin, and Bowen Byram. I think it makes sense for them to go right shot defenseman here at 14th overall, and based off of how I have things playing out, I think Carter Yakimchuk would be the best available. And now finally, finishing up my mock draft at 15th overall, I have the Detroit Red Wings selecting right shot centerman Konsta Helenius out of Finland. 14 goals, 36 points in 51 games in the Liga this season. Very solid production for an 18-year-old playing in that league. He's a guy that fits the mold of the kind of players Steve Yzerman have drafted over the last couple of years, you know, the likes of Nate Danielson and Marco Kasper. A high energy, high compete guy that plays a smart two-way game. I don't think Helenius has the kind of dynamic, game-breaking offensive talent that the Red Wings are in need of, but let's be real, they're not getting that at 15th overall anyways. So that is going to wrap up my 2024 top 15 NHL mock draft. Like I mentioned at the beginning, I always want to know what you guys are thinking, so be sure to let me know your predictions for how you think the top 15 is going to play out down below in the comments. Before I get out of here, I do want to quickly touch on a trade that took place yesterday between the Calgary Flames and the Washington Capitals. The Washington Capitals have acquired forward Andrew Mangiapane from Calgary in exchange for a 2025 second-round draft pick. Mangiapane is heading into the final year of his contract next season, has a cap of $5.8 million. He scored a career-high 35 goals back in the 2021-22 season, but that was definitely an outlier when you look at the rest of his career. But he's definitely still a guy the Capitals should be able to count on to get them between 15 to 20 goals. I think it's very unlikely he gets back to that 35-goal level. It seems like the Calgary Flames are really starting to finally fully embrace this rebuild. We already saw them trade Jacob Markstrom. Now Mangiapane's gone, and according to David Pagnotta, he said nothing is imminent and he has a full no-move clause, but there's word out there that the Calgary Flames are exploring the trade market on Nazem Kadri, and if that is the direction the Calgary Flames are headed, I think it's good for the organization. Obviously, as a fan, you never want to see your team suck and go through a rebuild, but I think it's became pretty clear over these last few seasons that it's probably in the Flames' best interest to rebuild. The return here isn't anything crazy, being just a second-round draft pick, but that really shouldn't be a surprise to anyone. This is a guy whose value is not at the same level it was a couple seasons ago, and quickly looking at this deal from the point of view of the Capitals, it's pretty clear they are looking to build off of their playoff appearance from last year. We already saw them acquire Pierre-Luc Dubois, and now they get another top 6 forward in Andrew Mangiapane. After adding those two, does that thrust the Washington Capitals into contender status? I don't think so, but you at least got to respect the effort. It's became clear that as long as Ovechkin is still going strong, they are going to try to put a competitive team around him, and although I don't think Mangiapane is that much of a needle mover, he's definitely a quality player, a nice addition for the Capitals at a very reasonable price. So those are my quick thoughts on the Mangiapane trade. As always, I want to know your guys' thoughts, especially if you're a fan of either the Flames or the Capitals. Let me know how you're feeling about this deal down below in the comments. If you guys made it all the way to the end of the video and you ended up enjoying yourself, please remember to leave it a like. That is definitely the best way to let me know that you enjoyed. And most importantly, if this was your first time checking out the channel and you want more NHL content just like this all year round, be sure to hit that subscribe button, and I'll talk to you all again soon.